to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter, and today we have two special guests. This is the first time we've had two guests at the same time. We have the Rewind guys, Dusty Litster and Dane Stewart. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, thanks, Hutch.
Appreciate that. Excited to be here.
All right, so I'm probably going to have to differentiate when I ask questions. So, Dusty, let's just start with you. Take just a couple of minutes, talk about where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, and then we'll get to Dane after you go.
Yeah, so I grew up in Wellington, Utah, in Carbon County. I'm the fifth of six kids in my family. I'm the third boy. So, I had two older brothers I looked up to, and college is kind of a funny thing, but I'm probably the oldest sophomore at BYU at the moment. So never quite finished college. Still planning on getting that done. I joked that I'd be done with college before my oldest daughter turned 8. That has not happened. She's 9 and I'm still not close, but we'll still figure that out. First job, it's interesting. My first job was actually as a broadcaster. I got a job when I was a senior in high school, got asked to just come on and start broadcasting when I was a senior on a local station down in Price on Channel 9. And, absolutely loved it. And that's when I already knew I wanted to be a broadcaster, but it was a great way to get my foot in the door and get there. But coached baseball for 7 years, coached American Legion ball for 7 years down in the Helper American Legion team down in Carbon County, and just absolutely loved it. And been around sports my whole life, chasing after my brothers. I grew up in every dugout known to man. My dad coached ball, was a state commissioner, Babe Ruth, all that stuff. So sports has just been a big part of my life.
So you knew touchdown Tony Pinedo down at Carbon then?
Oh, Coach Pinedo. Yes, he was my choir teacher too. Me and Coach Pinedo, we go way back. And we're a few of the Mexican Italians that are around.
Yeah, he's in a good friend of mine that worked at Jordan High, Phil Broadhead. He's married into that family. That's how I got to know him.
Okay.
So and you mentioned Wellington. I'm very familiar with Wellington. Every time, for years and years, we used to go with my family over Easter break down to Moab.
Yeah.
And always on the Sunday on the way home, we'd always stop, get the gear out and have lunch right there in the Wellington Park.
Oh, you drove right by my house. My house is literally on the side of Highway 6. So you probably saw little Dusty out there playing ball in the yard.
Something else you'll find familiar in the novel that I wrote, which I don't think any of you are familiar with. There's a couple of scenes that take place up the road from Wellington, almost into Price. There used to be, it wasn't a 7-Eleven, but it was a little kind of a stop and go shop. And that's actually plays prominent in the novel that I wrote. So very interesting.
Oh, I got to check that out. Yeah.
All right.
Dane
let's get to you.
Carbon County, so.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like this is the first time I've ever heard Dusty's from Carbon County. I mean, that never comes up.
Yeah, that never comes up ever.
I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and was the third of 4 kids there. I was really kind of the only one in the family that liked sports, actually. We all kind of played recreational soccer growing up. But by the time I was just getting ready to have my parents give me the thumbs up for me to play football, because I was nagging them at a young age, I wanted to play. And they're like, we don't want you to get hurt. Just around the time I had them, ready to let me try out, actually, we went to check out the doctor and was actually diagnosed with a blood condition. So I actually have never played organized sports.
Really?
Which is kind of sad. 10 years ago, I would say it's probably the biggest disappointment of my life. As I've gotten older and a little bit wiser, I've come to terms that is not the most important thing. It's fun. But, I've relished opportunities like we have, Dusty and I, to still be connected to sports and to be able to connect with athletes. But I'm a bit of an outsider to the world, but, grew up and did a little bit of PA announcing in high school and a little bit of radio in Boise there. So I've just always tried to find ways to be connected in the sports world. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to kind of still do that, even though I was never able to kind of, experience it inside of a jersey or an organized team fashion. So,
okay. So you're a Boise Brave?
I actually went to Centennial High School.
Okay.
Up in Boise. Yeah.
He's a Patriot.
So I'm a Patriot.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
A Patriot. Yes.
Yep. So those were the glory days, man. There was a lot of good teams we had up there. And, my days, so like Brock Forsey was a running back up there, went to play with in the NFL for several years, and had a lot of, anyway. Yeah. Centennial.
So you graduated from Centennial in what year?
2000. Yeah.
And Dusty, when did you graduate from Carbon?
02.
02. So you may remember this before I get to the next question, Dusty. Do you remember when there was an East Carbon High School?
Oh, heavens, yes. Wellington, I went and swam at East Carbon all the time. I mean, half my ward went to East Carbon.
Oh, that's there you go. Small world. Well, we'll go to Dane first on this one. Talk to our audience, both here in Utah and nationally, about some of the mentors that had an effect in your life. And then when you're done, we'll go straight to Dusty.
Yeah. That's a good question. I was thinking about this a little bit, and, the first ones that came to my mind were my parents, growing up in Idaho. And, we had a really good family, tight knit family. But when I was early teens, my dad lost his job, and, being the third of four, had an older brother who was getting ready to go to college, and a younger sister who was getting ready to go to college. And I'm approaching high school, and we kind of had to, figure out how we were going to make ends meet. And my mom was always a stay-at-home mom growing up, but about that time she had to go to work. And my dad, who was an engineer, had to kind of go back to jobs that he did when he was in college, trying to pay his tuition in college, and kind of reverted back to that in his, mid to late 40s. And it really just taught me a lot about hard work and having to figure out, sometimes life doesn't go your way. Sometimes the game doesn't go your way, and you've got to be able to pivot and figure out what you're going to do next. And so they've been great examples of that to me. And I've always remembered that lesson and have tried to incorporate that at times in my life. One of my great mentors, actually, this is kind of funny from a broadcasting perspective. So I always kind of wanted to get into broadcasting. I always thought that would be fun, not being able to play sports, but to be able to cover them. And I remember in high school, I had to write a paper, and it was one of those, what do you want to be when you grow up sort of a thing. And I was like, if I could just interview somebody, but it's Boise, right? You don't have anyone there who's doing big time games or anything. And at the time, Boise State was not very good. I would argue they still aren't. But that being said, there's a little rivalry there that we have to incorporate. So I reached out to the local television anchor, and those who are on Twitter might recognize the name Mark Johnson at KTVB. He trended on Twitter like a couple of months ago for no reason other than like the station posted a picture of him and his name. But Mark Johnson, who's still the anchor up there, he was the sports anchor at the time. And he let me, a lowly high school sophomore or junior, come and interview him and spend time with him on the set and in the studio. And I always remember that because, very easy for people who have prominence, especially in a smaller community like Boise was at that time, to just not feel like they have to do that, right? They're kind of the man, they own the show. Mm-hmm. And I don't have time for this little high schooler to come and spend time with me, but I'll always remember Mark Johnson allowing me to come and interview him and ask him questions and kind of, learn the ropes a little bit, see what he did, and was a really cool introduction to me. But it's one of the things that Dustin and I have continued to do, and why we relish opportunities like this is, we recognize that we do have kind of a cool platform and a really cool opportunity to be able to still stay connected. And we love to be able to talk about it and to help people who are interested in it to also learn about it. And so that was kind of the first example for me. And again, something that I've just remembered is Dusty and I have been able to grow this, and as we've been able to interact with people that, there's a lot you can do to just kind of help people see what it's like and kind of dip their toes in it and get a feel for it. And so he's been just a really cool example for me in my life that I've often thought back on.
Thanks for sharing. Dusty, to you.
Yeah. It's interesting. We always want to talk about parents, right? And I talk about my mom, and she just always let us go, right? I got to play in every sport known to man, but a lot of that is because my dad loved baseball, still does. And I talked about earlier, he was a state commissioner for Babe Ruth for as long as I can remember. And it didn't matter. I had my two older brothers that played. My dad coached every one of their little league teams, Babe Ruth teams and everything else, and even put together Legion teams and all that kind of stuff. And And he still kept coaching. And the gap between my brother, that's my second brother, and myself was about a 4-year gap before I started getting into Babe Ruth. My dad still coached. And so I was always around that and watched him just make impacts on young men. And it was awesome as I've gotten older to see that more and more people that have their kids that are from Carbon County and that come up and their kids are now playing at Copper Hills or wherever. They come up, they're like, Dusty, how's your dad doing? You know, and I don't remember these guys, but I was the bat boy, right? And they're like, I remember when you were just little and you were the bat boy. I had a guy just a couple weeks ago. And he was like, hey, tell your brother hi, but how's your dad? You know, so many people. You know, Justin Heidemann is one of our sponsors, and he, you know, my dad was one of those guys for him. And so it's just great. And that was a great example to me growing up with my dad, because he's always been that for me as well. But when you get into sports and coaching, it's interesting. When I got into high school, I played 1 year at Carbon baseball, and things just went the way it went. I got in the American Legion my junior year. I went to go try out, and the coach there, his name's Jeff Cisneros, and he actually cut me. I'll never let him forget this. He cut me for, I won't even say the name of the kid, but anyway, he cut me. I've never let him forget it. My senior year, he asked me, hey, Dusty, you can come play. I was like, I'm not going to cut me. And he's like, no, just come on. And so my senior year, I get on the Help American Legion team. We had an awesome team, and guys that went on, you know, Travis Barnett was from Emory, went and pitched in the minor leagues, was in the Tampa Bay Rays team for a long time. And Troy Grundy went on to be the Gatorade Player of the Year when he was a sophomore. He was 2 years younger than me, and Troy was, I mean, this kid was throwing 96, 97 miles an hour. And I was part of that team, and I actually essentially became a coach because I hadn't played for 3 years. And I just took over being the first base coach and being part of things. And Jeff became such a mentor to me, watching him and how he was always prepared. We finished that year, went to Western Regionals and things. And when we got done, I was getting ready to go on my mission. And Jeff's like, hey, Dustin, when you come back, come coach. And so when I came off my mission, I coached them for 7 years and just learned so much about being prepared, about always having the answers. Jeff always had everything, and still does. I mean, Jeff still, to me, is someone that I can reach out to, and I know he doesn't have the answers. And he's done a great job at Carbon High baseball and been an outstanding coach there, still part of the Legion program and things. But is someone that's made a major impact to me. He's been doing that for about 25, almost 30 years now. And he even coached my oldest brother when he was a freshman or a sophomore at Carbon. So he's someone that's been a great deal to me and has always made a major impact on why I want to be a part of, continue to be part of high school sports. Is there's those two major mentors to me, my dad and Jeff Cisneros.
Very good. Let me ask you this before we get to the next question. Obviously, you remember Charlene Dupin, former
Absolutely.
AD down at Carbon. Of course, Ted Bianco, who's actually leaving now to go up to Juan Diego.
Ted was my freshman baseball coach, and I probably could share a nickname, but I won't because he'll probably come beat me up. Whatever. Turbo Ted. If Ted sees this, Turbo Ted. I love Turbo Ted. That's my guy. I love Coach Bianco. But yeah, Cheryl, Coach Dupin. She and her husband Paul was my football coach. He actually coached my dad and my three brothers, or myself and my two brothers. So that's Paul awesome. Was there forever. I love the Dupins, but Coach Bianco, he's my man.
Dane, I would name drop with you because I know the athletic director at Boise High, but I do not know the athletic director at Centennial. So,
yeah, well, and it's been a long time since I've been up there. I wouldn't even be able to tell you who ADs or teachers or principal, any of that. It's been a while. So,
all right. Well, since I have you, we'll go to you first again, Dane.
All right.
The question is, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it? And as soon as you're done, we'll go back to Dusty again.
Yeah. So my biggest failure was probably my first job out of college. So my first job out of college, I actually declared 8 majors in college. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, but I ended up taking a job with a company, and I was a financial, they call it a credit manager, essentially, where I would look at customers and their portfolios and try to figure out how we might be able to help them to improve their credit and to maybe get in better loans at the time than what they were in. It was kind of sold as this job with all sorts of potential, and it certainly was. It was a tough market that I went to, and just learned very on it was not for me. Was a challenge for me to be able to kind of make sales to customers, was a challenge for me to cold call and just the whole job in and of itself. I lasted there about 3 months. And they ended up shutting down the branch. That wasn't because of me. It was a tough area, but I certainly didn't help the cause there. And they offered me a transfer elsewhere. And I was just like, you know what, this is just not the right role, not the right path for me. And so ended up, taking another position elsewhere. And, my career has moved on since that point. But the things that I kind of learned from that, two things. One, I'm not a salesman. That was number one. I do not sell. But the second item was, in that type of a position, and I know Dusty, he probably experiences this a lot. And he's like, man, I learned that a lot younger than you did. It doesn't hurt, no is not the worst thing. All you can do is ask, and sometimes people are going to say no, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're inferior. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean you're not intelligent, you're not capable. Sometimes you just get the answer no. And sometimes it's like, well, what's the worst thing they're going to do if I ask the question? Say no. And the most of the time, that's the worst thing they can do. And so what I learned from that is, no is not any reflection of your personal abilities, capabilities. Sometimes that's just how it is. And you move on to the next one, because you might go through 10 no's, 20 no's, 30 no's, 40 no's. But even in that role, when I was able to help a customer, it made all those no's worth it. That you knew that, oh man, this customer was in a really rough spot, and we were able to get them a solution that was a lot better for them and their family. And those moments, while they were few and far in between for me in those 3 months, made the no's worth it. And so sometimes you have to go through some no's to get to the yeses, and it's worth it when you do. And, we're usually not worse off by hearing no. Never hurts to ask, and no is not hurtful. That was probably what I learned from that experience.
That's a great reflection and a great attitude about that. Dusty, to you.
Yeah, and Dane learned something I learned too, that no is actually one of the most freeing words you can hear in that setting. So check back with me later is one of the worst things. You get kept on the hook. This is interesting because Dane shared something outside of broadcasting, and so am I. And this is one of my favorite stories to share. And I don't share with a lot of people. So one of the jobs I've had in the past was I worked for a company called Prodigy Promos, and I was in the ASI world for a long time in promotional products. And I had a large client. I had amazing years, and I was on my third year, having a great year. And I picked up a new client. I thought they were going to be part of my future. And I learned something like Dane did. They were missing some payments, and they were a very stressful client to have. They were a large account that I'd landed, but they were missing payments. And I had just listened to the owner. She was someone I felt like I could trust. She was being forthright with me, I felt like. And she was late, and the company came to me and said, Dusty, you should just let them go. Just let them go, and we'll walk away from this. But, you have to pay back your commissions on them, but you're going to have to just let them go. And as I talked to her, let her talk me into to keeping her on. And the company said, hey, Dusty, if you're going to do this, you have to personally guarantee your accounts. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. She's going to pay. I'll risk it. That's an investment, right? But I'm not going to let this big client go. This is an investment. And 3 or 4 months later, she fully defaulted on her account. And it was to the tune of $50,000. And what I had personally guaranteed was not my commissions. It was the revenue which she owed. And it was one of the biggest blunders of my life. And I let it continue to go because I was afraid when it was at 20,000, I was afraid to go tell the owner, like, hey, I think I'm in over my head. Help me get out of this. Cause I was like, no, I'll figure it out. And instead of getting help, I just kept trying to push it out. And that day finally came that the bill was due. And I stayed at that company. I wouldn't leave. I was there for 6 months without being paid. Had every check garnished from August 2014 until February 2015. And, but I wouldn't leave. The owner came to me and said, hey, Dusty, you should go. Like, I won't feel any ill will. Like, you should go. And I'd learned from my dad and mothers that, hey, your word has to mean something. Like, it has to. Absolutely. There was no one else made the decision but me. the owner of the other company did me wrong, but I made the decision to get into that position. And I remember the day, I'll never forget this, because it was the semifinals of the 2015 state basketball tournament. I closed the deal I needed. It was a large deal that paid back every dime and gave me my first commissions in 7 months. And I still saved, I took a screenshot of the email when I sent it to the owner, what he'd said back to me. And it's one of the things every year on its anniversary, I look at that email, I sent it to him. It's like, man, can you believe it? It's another year. And it's one of the things that I learned that, hey, stick it out and good things will happen. And I'd love to say that all of a sudden I had this amazing run. Some other decisions came, but I learned that, hey, you just take your lumps when you earn them, you take them, but you learn from them too. And it was one of my favorite stories to share. It's one of the hardest things to admit, but I think there's a lot of lessons in there.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I want to get to to the crux of the matter, which is why I have you both on the show. It's the rewind. I want to preface this question. I saw a Dan Rather interview with Crosby, Stills, Nash about, 4 or 5 years ago. It was on some cable channel. And they asked Stephen Stills how they got together, and they asked Graham Nash how they got together. And parts of it were the same, but parts of it were different. So I'm going to ask you first, Dusty, and then I'm going to ask Dane if he agrees with it. When this rewind thing started, how did it start, and how did you two, Boise and I'm going to say Price, even though you'd moved by then, get together to form this rewind thing, which has become so successful?
I think we'll be pretty accurate on this. I think anyway. Let's see. So what's funny, Dane, this is funny. I talked about one of my mission. I went to Philadelphia. Dane went to a neighboring mission in Harrisburg. Now they're the same mission, but at the time they were separate. It's kind of awesome. But after I came home, Dane was already at Utah State, and I had reached out by another company, or this company had come up, and they were doing what's called Utah Sports Network on Comcast. And I had a connection there, and they'd asked me to come do a Babe Ruth baseball game, and one game led to two games led to the week, whatever. But I was brought on to be the football. After I got done, they said, hey, we're going to be doing 2 football games a week. Why don't you take on one of those games? And I was so excited. I'm 21 years old, and I've got my dream job. I mean, I'm broadcasting at 21. This is awesome.
So was it color, or was it play-by-play?
I was
both?
the play-by-play guy. No, I was the play-by-play guy. And, my first, and you'll know this name, Kelly Newbold was my very first on-air partner, my very first game. He was the
Kelly, former assistant at Jordan High, who became the head basketball coach at Carbon. There you go. Carbon. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
Yeah, Kelly's one of my favorite guys, and but
he was an assistant for me, actually. Parenthetically.
Oh, really?
The one year that I coached baseball at Jordan back in '83, maybe '84. Wow. Crazy, small world. Go ahead.
It is crazy, and but that football season was hard. I had a hard time keeping partners. I didn't have a lot of connections at that time in Salt Lake, and the company that I was working for, had brought on this. So we get to basketball after I couldn't find a good partner, partners to stick with me. And one of the owners came to me and was like, hey, Dusty, we got this guy. And I met Dane, kinda. He was running the replay on one of the trucks. And during the football tournament semifinals, and Riley Nelson just running ruckshaw all over 3A, Dane and I would talk through the headset. I don't even remember meeting Dane that week or those 2 weeks. But they're like, hey, Dane, we should come do a game with you. What do you think? And I was like, if we could have a consistent partnership, that is awesome. And so that's how Dane and I got paired up. I mean, this was in 2000. That was the fall of 2006 through the winter of 2007. That's when Dane, Stewart, and I met. And I've just been so fortunate as we went different things, and I tried to figure out what we were going to do, and started developing Rewind, that Dane has always been there. Dane and I built an amazing friendship, and I think most people, we shared this another thing we did, that people would be shocked that Dane and I, we are friends, and we talk when it's not just on camera, and it's just been one of the great things for me. It's the second longest relationship I have is with Dane Stewart, and outside my best friend Kyle Wilson, former basketball coach at Carbon, it's one of the things I'm most proud of, and so that's how we got together. The development of Rewind has been a long and arduous journey, though.
Well, okay, so we'll get to that. So I want to go straight to Dane now. Dane, is that how you remembered, or are you going to give me the Graham Nash version?
It's mostly the same. So I was at the Utah State University, and I was working as an office supply salesman there. I learned I wasn't a salesman. These were the early days when I was still trying to kind of, learn the biz. But
this is when you were figuring out still you weren't a salesman.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. It's easy to sell pens. It's a little harder to sell other people giving you their money. But I was selling office supplies, and my boss was actually an official in the state of Utah, did sophomore and JV games. And he would call me into his office. And at first I thought I was in trouble. No, he just wanted to talk scenarios. Hey, I had this scenario last night. What's the call? And so we would talk about that all the time. Well, he had a son-in-law who was operating or running a production company. He said, hey, they're always looking for guys in the truck. If you want, I'm sure I can get you on there. I'm like, man, that'd be awesome. And so, they brought me in, and I started working replay. And, the highlight of my replay career was probably an onside kick call in Rice-Eccles Stadium.
Jared Bowlby will remember it well.
I still feel bad for that official. We probably got reamed for showing that too much, but my goodness, man, as a replay guy, when you don't get, you got to take advantage of the opportunity in the lifetime.
Absolutely.
So anyway, but yeah, shortly after that, I always had something to say in the mic to our producer, to other people. We'd always just talk about the game while I was in the truck, and they came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to start doing games?" I was like, "Yeah, of course. I mean, I've been calling games since I opened up my PlayStation when I was 12 years old. Of course I want to do that." And so they ran me with Dusty, and it is, it's hard, in fairness to me, it's hard for me to be his longest running relationship when I'm not from Carbon County. So I'll settle for second. I'll take that. That's okay. But no, I mean, Dusty is my longest running relationship that is still in force. And it's been great. He's been extremely loyal to me, and there, as he mentioned, there's been ups and downs and twists and turns, but he's always been great to reach out and still keep me included and involved. And it's made it really fun what we've been able to build over the years.
And so was it Rewind from the get-go? I mean, I always knew it as Deseret News Rewind, which it's not now, but I didn't know it before. It may have had another name. I assume it's always been Rewind with something in front of it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, Hutch, it's funny because I remember going to Jordan games and having to call Hutch Hunter to get permission to go there when I was with, the original Comcast Games of the Week. In fact, the very first time we ever had a promo thing that ran before our game started, this when Dane and I were partners at a different company. We had the Dusty and Dane's Game of the Week. Oh, that ruffled some feathers. That was awesome. It was at Jordan Alta. But yeah, so that was part of a different company when in 2009 is when we started High School Rewind. And High School Rewind was kind of a takeoff of the NFL Rewind that you see on, like, I think it's Tuesdays. They take the best games and cut them down. So, that started in 2009. And then that was from 2009 to 2014. There was High School Rewind. And then we were Xfinity Sports Report, 2015. That was short-lived. And then that's when we made the move to Deseret News. And that's when we got the name back. So Deseret News Rewind. And now we will and forever be known as Game Night Live Rewind, as we've made the move to KSL Sports.
Well, same parent company, Deseret News and KSL, just a different name with the same parent company. So so you guys have been doing this, and of course, I've become a huge fan, and of course, that's because I'm the proud grandpa. So, that's.
Hey, you guys are our best watchers, man. We love the grandparents.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I get the point being is that because Eric doesn't like to play Thursday night games. Dave Fox calls him and says, "I want to play Thursday." And Eric says, "No, I'm not doing it." Like he played Thursday this year, the first game of the year, because there was no game in front of it. So he said, "Sure, I'll move it and play Thursday." And I think we played Farmington. Obviously, they won. But he keeps telling me, so they think it's a big deal, and it's a big deal for the kids, he says, but it's one day less of preparation for me. And so he doesn't. So when he has a Thursday game, then I get to watch you guys this year on Friday nights. And so let me ask you this. I want your two best stories, so I guess we'll go one apiece. Dane, give me your best story from your Rewind days, and then Dusty, we'll go back to you.
Man, this is hard because I have two that are both really, really tight for me. I'll go with the one, and I've shared this on other discussions that we've had, but mine is probably Mason Wake. He was an outstanding football player for Lone Peak.
Sure.
Now at BYU.
Well, I know of him. I don't know him.
Okay. Well, he's a great kid. Family is a great family. But his senior year, there was a recruiting trip that he had scheduled, but he had a family friend and they had moved up here to Salt Lake City and had a daughter with cerebral palsy. And all she wanted to do was to take Mason to a dance. That's what she wanted to do. And Mason kind of, didn't blow off, but postponed his recruiting trip and went and took this girl to her high school dance. And we did a little blurb on that. And it was just really cool for me. You look at what some guys are doing, especially for athletes, is a great brand that's out there right now and really trying to help athletes kind of get outside of the locker room and outside their team and look for individuals in the hallways and in their schools that could use a helping hand, a smile, encouragement. And, this was kind of that at its core. An opportunity for Mason, who knew he was going to have opportunities to go play football, just to kind of take a step back and really focus on something that's important and that would make a difference in someone else's life. I just love the story. I love his ability to kind of put off, what I think most 17, 18-year-old boys would want to go do on a recruiting trip, and to get outside of himself and to think about another family, another human, and show some love to that person. So that's still one of my favorite stories that we've ever talked about. It still just, rings with my heart. Loved what we saw from Mason Wake on that weekend in his senior year.
That's a great story, and a story about really what high school sports is all about. So, Dusty, we go to you.
Yeah, it's like picking from your favorite children. And I normally do that at home. I will try not to do it here. But, it's kind of probably recency bias, but it's where I was in life. And it's the Tia Stokes story from last year. And mainly because Dane and I, we don't break stories. It's not what we try to do. We try to cover and talk about as many kids and things as we can. But it was one we felt like we could get involved in. Mm-hmm. And Dane found out about the jersey sale and things like that. But my favorite part of the story was the Lehigh game when, they had everything going on and coach was being quarantined and he couldn't be there. They won. And my favorite part of the story is how they took the buses to the Stokes' house. And, and a year ago, my mom was diagnosed with ALS. It was a short-lived diagnosis. She didn't make it very long and died right before Thanksgiving. But it was part of a time of my life that it meant a lot. To watch that and to try to be a part of it. And anyway, wasn't trying to make it about us, wasn't trying to make it about anything else, just want to be part of trying to help the Stokes the best we could, and do the jersey thing, bring it up, and we actually made things we could to take care of Tiffy football, make sure they get streamed, so she could actually. My whole point of that was to try to make sure that Tia could watch the games from home and make that access there, and was locked down. So I love that story because those boys years from now. They lost the state championship, but when they get together, I will bet dollars to donuts they're talking about that night at the Stokeses, Sand Lawn, because they learned that sports means a lot, but it's the brotherhood that it brings you. It's the family that grows when you're part of a team, and I love that story.
Well, let me ask you both this question. It wasn't on the list that I sent you, but you've been doing high school football now for 16, 17 years, and so. Talk about I won't ask you about what the best teams are, because that's a debate for another time. But
I know those.
We would love that debate.
Talk about how it's changed in Utah. I'm talking about Utah football now, how it's different from 2006 to now, because I know in 2006 it was much different back than when I was coaching at Jordan before I became the athletic director. So talk about the difference in Utah high school football.
Do you want to start, Dusty? Or do you want me to?
No, go ahead, Dane.
Go ahead, Dane.
I lost track where we are. So Dane will go to you, and then Dusty again.
I'll give you two notes. One, the jerseys. It was funny. We were talking with Riley Nelson a couple months ago, and he was like, "Man, my jersey was all big. It wasn't tight like they are now." And I try to put on those Tipview, Tia jerseys, and I can barely get it on. They are the jerseys are different. Now let's get to the important stuff. I'll tell you what in my mind has changed, and it's the recruiting. And just the profile of kids in this state. And I would love to hope that we help contribute to that growing profile. But I mean, you can look back at Riley Nelson, who set all sort of state records, set national records, and he ended up going to Utah State for a year before going down to BYU.
As a walk-on.
And was a walk-on at Utah State too. Didn't take a scholarship there.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then you look at Jackson Dart, who, was a 3-year starter at Roy, good career, had opportunities, but then he goes to Corner Canyon for a single year, breaks records, and it's full ride to USC. And I'm not saying that, Riley is Jackson or Jackson is Riley, but I think that the profile that Jackson was able to was bigger with the advances of technology and whatnot. But man, I mean, I just look at that and I just feel like the way that recruiting has changed in this state, it used to be that, maybe you would get a kid to a Pac-12 school and now you are sending several every year, right? Oregon, Washington, USC, Bama, Texas, I mean, the list goes on and on of where kids are going these days. So for me, the biggest change is just recruiting. And there's so many camps and development things that help to make players better here. And teams going out of state has certainly helped over the years. Seeing Bingham go and play Texas, and seeing East go, California, Texas, go represent the state and help put the state on the map. But to me, just the way that recruiting has changed and opportunities for players is really what's the most different.
Well, let me ask you this before I get to Dusty, because I view that, and of course, I know J Dart real well because obviously my grandson caught a lot of his passes along with the other 3 receivers at corner. But tell me if this is the right take on it. And if J Dart's listening to this isn't a slam on him at all, but the stars just kind of came together because ESPN picks up the Bingham game, and there is nobody in the United States playing football except for Corner and Bingham. And the week before, Corner loses Austin Bell, who was an All-Stater of the year. I mean, Austin Bell. And so as much as he threw the ball, I don't think he throws the ball as much if he has Austin Bell. And I think that Bingham game changed things. Is that maybe the proper outlook? Dusty, I'll let you answer that and then go back to Dane.
Well, I'll answer for Jackson Dart, because Jackson Dart told us, he said COVID was the best thing that ever happened to Jackson Dart and Zach Wilson. So he's very well aware of that. And that Bingham Corner Canyon game was big for us too, because, try to give him as many, I got a hold of the broadcast crew for ESPN and gave him as many notes as I possibly could. They were great to do that and cite us in the game. But absolutely, I mean, if it doesn't happen that way, Bingham Corner Canyon is a fun game in state. It doesn't become a national thing, and they're not sitting there watching it. It was a major boost. And Jackson told us that in his interview for Player of the Year. And he recognized that too.
Yeah. And the remarkable thing is, I mean, because you can look at, and again, I'm not comparing player to player, but you can go the 2 years prior. I mean, you have Cole Hagan, who never lost a game for Corner Canyon, right? And
Cole Hagan, I think, started 3 games as a sophomore when Zach's hurt, and then wins those, and then doesn't lose the next 2 years. You're exactly right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're good. And he's going to go Ivy League, and good for him. But I mean, it was a battle for him to try to get in-state schools. And so you look at Jackson and you talk about that national game. Well, no one else is playing football. In fact, everyone else is delayed a couple of weeks. So you see that start of the year on national television, and now all of a sudden everyone's hooked. And you look at the receiving core. You mentioned having Kerr there and Hagan. I mean, there were so many options there for him to throw to. You had Jackson Light up front, experienced, anchoring that offensive line. There were just so many things that just made that be so perfect for him. And look, Jackson's extremely talented. He doesn't need perfect, but it certainly helps with that trajectory to just see his recruiting absolutely take off.
He needed the platform. And that's the thing in the state of Utah, I think we would talk about what's changed too, is we've said forever, Dane and I both, if Cole Hagan plays at South Lake Carroll and does the exact same thing, Cole Hagan's getting offered by everybody. But because he was in Utah, for whatever reason, it's like, well, I guess he's okay. And I think it'll bear itself out. But Jackson got the platform. The platform was there, and everyone gets to see it. It's like, wait, this kid can do what? And it just takes off. And then he had to go prove it.
Well, and it's tough for me to be the one to say this because, as you both know, Eric's my son-in-law, but he's got a list of either state MVPs, 6A MVPs, or all-state quarterbacks, I think, that goes
all the way back to Sean Taylor.
Back to Sean Taylor. Yeah. And that's, I think, 14 of the past 15 years. And people keep saying, how does he do it? But he knows football, and he's very good at it. But one thing I wanted to give a shout out to Corner, and I realize I'm a little bit biased, but with the exception of Jackson Dart, those 3 championships that they have those are Corner kids. They're not from the west side of the valley, the east side, the north, whatever side of the valley. Those are Corner kids. I suspect, and I had this discussion with him today when I was lifting over a corner. I was talking to Casey Satera. He's got 9 starters coming back. Plus he's got Luke Staley's kid who's never played for Eric before. And he's got 6 other kids that started at one time or another on defense last year. And so, well, my hat's off to him. So Tell me this. What's one common myth? We'll start with you, Dusty. What's one common myth about being a broadcaster that you want to debunk?
That we have every piece of information known to man about every single kid. That covering high school sports is like covering Division I football or the NFL. And folks, Dane is one of the best prepared people I've ever met in my life. There is no way, no how we can know every relation within every school in the state of Utah, or even in the same high school for that matter. We don't know those things. I think most people think we get a bunch of information. We really don't. Dane and I spend a lot of time talking to people. We find anything we can to try to make that work. I think that's one of the myths. The other one is that we have favorites and non-favorites. I will be open in saying I have favorites, sure. Non-favorites doesn't really exist. It's about, hey, did I get some information from someone? I have someone reach out to me, any mode of it's Twitter, Instagram, anything. Say, hey, look at this, and I'll take a look. And if I get good info and the kid lives up to it, you just call them a favorite. It's like, I just got good info, and it's fun to share info when you get good info. But I wish nothing but great things for every kid in the state of Utah. I'm a Utah kid, Utah born and raised. And as much pride as I have about being from Carbon County, trust me, when I talk to other people from other states, go talk to my friends at Bishop Gorman. And all I did was talk to them about kids from Utah. Kenny Sanchez would tell you that. Every time I went down to a Bishop Gorman game, I told him about what's going on in Utah. I have great pride in where I'm from. And I want every kid from Utah, the state of Utah, to go make it to the NFL. And so there's not anyone that we dislike. I think those are two. Number one is not the information we get. Number two is that we have kids we don't like. Just not true. Just want the absolute best for them.
You'll find this interesting. I'm at the BYU Invitational. Gorman loses to Corner, and that's when Corner broke the 41 barrier in the 4x1.
Oh, right.
And these Gorman kids were like, these kids are from Utah. They can't run. So it was kind of crazy. Dane, to you.
So just to piggyback off that real quick, Cody Hagan is doing that right now all summer long at sevens. Everywhere he's going right now, everyone's like, who is this kid? Watch him. He's going to blow up this year. And I really loved him on that team last year. I'll give you one other tidbit. Dusty said that he does have favorites. I'll give you the key on how to be a Dusty favorite, because there's something here, right?
Wait, one of them has to be my grandson. Is that it?
Well, yeah, but he fits the mold here. All right. So here's how you can be a Dusty favorite. I'm just going to lay this out. Carbon High School, BYU. It used to be Bingham. Now it's Corner Canyon. What's all the similar? Blue and white, folks. If you want to be a Dusty favorite, just go blue and white, and you are in with Dusty Litster.
There you go. Or is it the navy blue, or is it the royal blue? Or as
royal.
I call the BYU blue. I actually call it the Utah State blue.
Hey,
because I think they hijacked it from them.
Yeah. All right, my myth, I would just say it's not as easy as people think. We talk about, we'd love to give people exposure, and people will come on. And after the first quarter, I usually like, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Oh man, this is hard. Yeah, it is. Right. We're streaming games. We have a very limited number of commercials that we can go to. Someone has an injury. You're filling air, right? We're in a timeout. You're filling air. And you don't want to talk just for the sake of talking. So to Dusty's point, there is no ESPNhighschool.com that is built for the state of Utah. So if you have stuff that you need to talk about, you need to fill air, you better have done your prep leading up to that game. And I think that's one of the things is, people see videos and they see games and they're like, oh, that'd be so fun. It's like, yeah, it is fun, and we're, behind or in front of a camera for 4 or 5 hours a week. For me, I am off camera 10 to 15 hours a week doing my prep, and I still get stuff wrong. And we still have people reach out. Oh, you said this wrong. You named that wrong. You didn't play there. It's like, yeah, you're right. But we do the best that we can trying to piece this together because there is no central source. And so, we do the best we can. But for me, it's like, it is a very time required type thing. It is a lot of fun. We love it. But man, there's a lot of off hours that go into making everything work and having things come across the way that we want them to.
There's great wisdom in that, because if some kid gets hurt, you've either got to be prepared with something filler, or it's Heidemann and Associates commercial 1, 2, 3, and 4. I get that.
I'll tell you the worst thing. So I've done soccer for a number of years, and I used to ask coaches, who's your starting keeper? And a lot of times they used to transfer the goalie shirt. So had a goalie get hurt, transfer the shirt. And it's like, I have a list of 35 players, and I have no idea who that is.
Who that kid is.
Welcome to the world of high school sports, right, Dane?
Yep.
Every jersey. Yeah. I mean,
there's no stats.
School. Yeah.
There's nowhere to go to. It's like, all right, well, great job by the Keep. And that's how I referenced them the entire rest of the game, the Keep. Because I didn't know if it was Jim, if it was Bob, if it was Joe, no clue.
And then, of course, the Keep's grandpa sends you a nice little message over Twitter saying, how come you couldn't get my kid's name right?
Yeah.
Well, let's get close to winding this up. Tell me, we'll start with you. I think it's your turn, Dane. What's the favorite part of your job? And then we'll go back to Dusty.
Yeah, this is quick for me. For me, I love being able to help create some of the energy and soul in the sport in the state of Utah. We love that people watch us. We try to keep it fun. But, man, there is just something about being at a game when you have a good crowd, a competitive game, and it just kind of catches that energy up in the broadcast, in the stream, and that is just so fun. I know we're not participants in it, but we're kind of participants in it. And in talking with officials, that's what they love too. They love being a part of the game. And so I love being a part of the game, not in the game, but being a part of the game, and then being able to help tell the story. You know, I give Dusty a lot of flack, but it's kind of fun when Dusty's like, oh yeah, his grandfather's second cousin's neighbor used to live down in Carbon County. You know, like there's something there that helps bind everything together. And so it's fun to be able to kind of navigate and weave the story of high school sports in the state of Utah. It's an absolute blast.
You're great. Dusty?
Yeah, you know, Dane and I are on the same wavelength there. You know, my favorite thing is, you know, just go back to the baseball tournament. And it's just being part of the moment. You know, I'm doing the baseball tournament this last, you know, back a couple weeks ago. And Salem Hills is down 2 runs in the bottom of the, or top of the 7th inning, or pardon, bottom of the 7th inning, 2 outs. Kid gets a walk. Next kid gets up. It's a 1-2 count. And he hits a home run. And it's the place goes nuts. And it's getting to have that call that kids can go back and watch a million times. I talked about the thing with my mom, you know, and right before she passed away, I put something on Twitter, and I had a mother reach out to me, a girls soccer mom, reached out and just wrote a great thing about Dane and I had done a state championship soccer game, Corner Canyon. I guess they win a lot of championships, but she just talked about that they've watched that game over and over and over again, and that's why we do it. Parents can go back and watch it. If that game didn't have commentary, would they go back and watch it? Yeah. Do we add something to that because we make sure there's a commentator on every championship game that we're now a part of? Absolutely. And I love to think that we add something to it. So when they go back and watch it, it's not just the ambient air. It's the call. It's thinking back now at Springville. When Lauren Deedy goes back and watches that shot that wins the Springville 5A championship, she'll have commentary there. She'll have Dane saying great things. We'll have that whole thing. And that's what I love about it. That's my favorite part, is that we can be part of the moment. We're part of their history. We're part of that memory that they're going to have. And we help create something and produce something that is going to allow them to go back and rewatch it and watch it over and over and over again. And they can show their family, then their kids, hopefully their kids show their kid, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's what I love about it.
Yeah, both of them great answers. And that's what's great about high school sports. So let me ask you this as we're just about wrapping up. I normally have athletic directors on the show, as you know, but I asked them for their suggestions for an athletic director from the AD point of view. But I'm asking you, what would you tell a newer AD that's going to help them in their media communication at school and with people like yourselves and the print and the TV media? And I think it's Dusty's first this time, I hope.
Yeah, I would say, number one, please be an advocate. Media coverage is changing rapidly. In the 16 years we've been doing this, so rapid. Like I said, we were doing on-demand, and we had coaches that didn't want us to come do games because they didn't want their games on-demand. We have coaches just this last year didn't want us to do games because they didn't want them up and they didn't want it in a rewatchable space. It doesn't hurt you. All the coverage in the world does everything for your kids. And I can't speak for every person that's in media, especially high school side, because it's dwindling. First of all, there's not a lot of us out there. But we're an advocate for the sport. We're an advocate for these kids, and it helps with recruiting. And one of the things that Dane talked about, we hope we can be part of that story of recruiting here from the state of Utah. Your kids need exposure. And so number one, be an advocate with the coaches. And then number two, help get us information. I think one of the biggest questions, if we reach out, and it's, if you have a media member coming, help get some information to us. If there's things that we need, that you feel, that your coaches feel, or you as an athletic director feel it's important, don't assume we know. You know, there's a great saying about assuming. I won't say it on air. But help us, bring it to us. There's something we should know, a tie or whatever, bring it to us. And we'll, you know, guaranteed you're gonna hear it on air. You're gonna see it printed. So those are two things I would share. Number one, be an advocate. Number two, be part of the help to make sure that just don't assume we know something, because more than likely we may know it, but most likely we probably won't. And it's a great note to be able to share.
Great answers. Dane, to you.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, and I know that, you know, ADs aren't really responsible for all of this, but they can certainly help to advocate it to their coaches and staffs. But, you know, it is tough. We talk about doing our own prep. Sometimes you go out and you have different rosters based on where you look. And I have no idea which roster I should bring. And I have no idea which roster's right. And you get there and it turns out neither of them are, because we haven't updated things in years. You know, that isn't something that happens real frequently, but when it does, when we're about trying to promote kids and players, boy, it is tough to manage that. And so, you know, sometimes we're scribbling down real quickly and trying to make that work. So anything we can do to have up-to-date information, you know, be easily accessible is so helpful for us in our preparation. You know, the kind of side note to that a little bit is, you know, help things to be accessible. We talk about promoting kids, promoting programs. And sometimes, you know, we like to go out on social media and tag schools and tag players. And again, I know ADs can't tell all the players to go, you know, grab a social media, but sometimes even wanting to tag a school, and it can be a challenge to find how do we tag this school so that their parents and their fans and alumni can see this, because this is something that we want to help brand the school with. And both of those things kind of support my other point, which is we are really here for you. And I know that sounds kind of corny and cheesy, but it's true. We are here to promote the athletes at your school and to promote your program and your coaches. And Dusty talked a little bit about it. You know, some coaches are still apprehensive. Some ADs are still apprehensive. We try to be as flexible as we can. We want to be there to help promote the athletes that are walking the hallways. And, you know, again, we talk about, we like to think that we have some ability to help make connections. I know every year I get multiple phone calls from guys who are interested in, who are guys that can play at my level at the next level. You know, be that JC, Division I, Division II, NAIA, whatever. I have those conversations every winter. Now I'm not, you know, tied to Kansas or any of those, but I'll tell you, you know, those kids are going to be taken care of. But for the kids that are going to go play at a JC somewhere, for the kids that are going to go play D3, NAIA, man, it is, you know, that's where I find so much joy saying, hey, what about this kid? Because he might fit this profile really well of what you're trying to look like, right? He's got this skill set, might fit that. We are really here. As Dusty mentioned, we want to see Utah athletes succeed. And so the more that we can be in gyms and stream games and have access, you know, to players and to games, it just makes that so much easier and allows us to help make those connections better. So those would be kind of the two things that I would say. We are really here for your programs and your players, and anything we can do to just have updated information just makes that so much easier.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to put in a plug now for the Game Night Live Rewind, guys. Obviously, we're recording this earlier. This actually will come out the Friday of the first week of football. So I'm going to put in a plug for those that are listening to this. If you're not live at a stadium tonight, check the Rewind, guys. They'll be there taking care. So it's not going to be the endowment week. It's the first week right there towards the end of August. So I want to finish up with this question, and we'll go first to Dane and then to Dusty. What question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you? See, it makes me sound like I'm a professional. I've been doing this for so long, and I haven't.
Yeah. You know, I did not come up with an answer for this one. I'll be honest. You know, some of it to me is, I think sometimes people maybe are hesitant to come talk to us. You know, by and large, everyone who comes and talks to us is awesome. And we've had so many great interactions and connections. I know Dusty shared, you know, parents reaching out to him. I've had great connections that have been built through this, and I'm so grateful for those. I don't know that there's any question that I would say you should ask us. The only thing I would share is, you know, Dusty and I, we have personalities that, you know, part of the reason why I shared that story about Mark Johnson at the beginning was because I don't think either of us take ourselves too seriously to distance ourselves from wanting to engage with parents, players, fans, whomever. Now there's a right way to do that, and there's probably a way that I would advise against. And there's an approach there. We're people too. We don't love people coming and banging down our back and throwing us across the field, and that has happened. We've had some that probably have approached us in a way that I wouldn't recommend. But we love to interact with parents and with players and with family members. We're people. We love the game, just like all you do. So it's not a question mark, or it's not an answer. But we're people, and we love to interact. Don't ever hesitate to come up. We've loved the relationship we've been able to build, and look forward to be able to build more with our Utah high school community in the years ahead. Great
response. Uncle Dusty, the last word is to you.
Yeah, I think you asked all the great questions. I think, especially from our point of view, we recognize that, I say this all day long in another job I'm in. We're a small part of your high school experience, and we try to make it bigger. So I don't know that, Hutch, there was another question you could ask that'd be so much better, other than who's the best Dino athlete of all time, to make it part of Utah stuff. But
okay, well, who is that then?
Of course, it's Jan. It's the mayor of Helper. It's Jan Jorgensen.
Okay.
Or Brady Martinez or Troy Grundy. I mean, I could go on and on, but no, it's but as Dane said, we love it, and we love what we do, and Hutch, we just appreciate guys like yourselves. I mean, like I said, you may not remember when I was 21, 22 years old, always had to come talk to you about, hey, can we set up over here? Can we do this? It's been a great thing. We recognize, for athletic directors, we can't do our job without them. They can easily do their job without us. I recognize that. But it's just a great appreciation for everything that everyone who's part of these games, we recognize, and hope that we recognize just like you do. We're like you. We just want to be a part of it. And it's because we love it. We're passionate about it. We want the kids to have the best experience possible. And it's just great to be a part of your podcast.
Thank you so much. That wraps it up for another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guests this week are Dusty Litster and Dane Stewart of Rewind fame. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week, where it'll be the final episode of season 2. And thank you once again, Dusty and Dane.
Hey, our pleasure.
Thank you.